Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Guru Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada. So thank you for joining in this auspicious month of Kartik and discussing Srimad Bhagavatam. I was hearing a lecture today on the glories of Kartik, and one of the potencies in the month of Kartik is if one reads one verse or half a verse or just one line of Srimad Bhagavatam, then one gets inconceivable benefits by the glories of Kartik. So thank you for giving me your association and the opportunity. So we'll start our discussion, resume our discussion from Canto 1, chapter 18 and verse 22. Maharaj Parikshit cursed by a Brahman boy. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Udire Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavatir Naishtiki Mukam Karoti Vacham Pangam Langite Girim Yat Kripa Tamam Vande Shri Guru Taranam Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay, so 118.22 Yatranuraktaha sahaseva dhira vyapoya dehadishu sangam mudam vrajanti tatparam hamashayam antayam yasmin ahimso pashana swadharma. Self-controlled persons who are attached to the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna can all of a sudden give up the world of material attachment, including the gross body and subtle mind, and go away to attain the highest perfection of the renounced order of life, by which non-violence and renunciation are consequential. So this is the part of the dialogue in which Sutta Goswami is responding to the encouragement by the sages of Naimisharanya to speak more about Krishna Katha by glorifying Krishna. So he had begun by glorifying Vaishnava Sangha, how that is potent, so potent that even one of a fallen birth like him can speak. Then he started speaking about the glories of Krishna, that how Krishna is great and inconceivable. And this verse is talking about the influence of the glories of Krishna on others. That Krishna is so glorious that not only is he great himself, but he makes one who comes in contact with him also great. So he speaks about the fact that when one worships Krishna, one becomes liberated. Or one can look at it the other way around, that Krishna is so great that one can observe his greatness by the nature of people who render service unto him. And they are also great. So both ways. That because a leader is great, he has great followers. or because a leader is observed to have great followers, he can be considered to be great. So because of this, he says, yes, men, dhira, people who are steady in their devotion in the Lord, upshama, are and devoid of envy and other bad qualities, ahimsa. So because of this, this quality manifests, this quality of being devoid of envy and other bad qualities. So because of the greatness of Krishna, when one comes in contact with Krishna, one becomes free of envy and any bad quality. So this verse also succinctly gives the result of following Bhakti Marg. So one who is anurakta. So anurakta means anu means to follow, and raktaha means that the path. So one who is firmly attached. So one who is firmly attached in this way, one who is a dhira, one who is self-controlled. What is the result of one who is anurakta and dhira and attached towards Krishna? So Sutta Goswami says, Vyapuya deha, that he leaves aside gross and subtle body. He is freed of the gross and subtle body. Sangamudam vrajanti. Material attachments go away. Paramhamshayam antyam. He achieves the highest stage of perfection and beyond. Yasmin ahimsa upamsa swadharma. So, and the path or the stage that he reaches is one in which Yasmin ahimsa upamsa, that there is a complete lack of hatred and absorption in bhakti as a consequence of this. Another way this phrase can also be interpreted is to express the superiority of paradharma, which is bhakti, over swadharma, which is varnashram dharma. So through this verse, Sutta Goswami can also be understood to be saying that one who follows the path of bhakti, yasmin, results in the renunciation, upsama, of one's own varnashram dharma, swadharma. So this term ahimsa can be applied to the process of renunciation, indicating that once one's own dharma is renounced in the favor of bhakti, there is no harm or violence. So in all cases, the understanding is that when one gives up the swadharma, then in favor of paradharma, then there is no loss but only gain. And the gains have been given previously. Vayapuya deha, that one leaves the material entanglement. Then sangamudam vrajanti, but material attachments go away. Paramhamsam antyam, one reaches the highest sage. So Sutta uses the word sahasa all of a sudden to indicate that when one reaches the platform of bhakti, all this happen instantaneously without any delay. So Srila Prabhupada, he comments on few of the main adjectives used by Sutta Goswami. So firstly, dhira. So the Goswami talks about the dhira. Prabhupada says that self-control means not indulging in sense enjoyment more than is necessary. So Prabhupada is speaking from a very practical perspective. So he's not saying that no enjoyment, but he's saying that not indulging in sense enjoyment more than necessary. So why is this statement being made? Because there is inevitably some sense enjoyment. So if you're thirsty and you drink water, then there is some enjoyment. When your thirst gets quenched and you feel satisfaction, so there is some inadvertent enjoyment. So one should not um, renounce that, saying that when I drank water, I felt enjoyment, and I should be on the path of no enjoyment, so I will not drink any water anymore. Similarly, when one eats food, then there is some satiety, there is some satisfaction. So like the Jains, they follow this path of trying to identify all paths, all points of enjoyment, and giving them up, which essentially makes them very, very hard-hearted. But Prabhupada here is talking about, from a Vaishnava perspective, no more than necessary. Then he talks about Paramhamsyam. So Paramhamsyam Prabhupada says that those who are attached to the means of Bhakti Yoga are factually self-controlled and can all of a sudden give up their homely or bodily attachment for the service of the Lord. So this is the Paramhamsa stage. Then Ahimsa. Real non-violence means freedom for envy. In this word, everyone is envious of his fellow being. So, Srila Prabhupada extends Ahimsa. Generally speaking, Ahimsa means not committing violence on another person. But here Srila Prabhupada extends it to say that not even being envious. Because envious is more of a passive state. You don't have to do anything to the other person explicitly by being envious. But Prabhupada says real ahimsa is freedom from envy. Then upsama, renunciation. Renunciation means renouncing one's dependence on the conditions of the material nature. And so that part makes sense. But the second part Srila Prabhupada says is renunciation is becoming completely dependent on the mercy of Krishna. So the first part is renouncing one's dependence on the material world. And the second part is renouncing one's sense of independence. And when you renounce one's sense of independence, then you become dependent on Krishna. So in a conversation once, Srila Prabhupada was asked that why are so many of your disciples taking sannyas? And Prabhupada said that the reason they are taking sannyas is to become independent of the authorities. So here Prabhupada was talking about false renunciation. That at least within the society of ISKCON, the sannyasis are at the apex and everybody else bows down to them. So at least within the society, they are most independent. So Srila Prabhupada was mentioning that this is the example of false renunciation. True renunciation is to manifest complete dependence on Krishna. Next verse 23. Aham prishto harimano bhavad. Different meter. Aham hi prashto harimano bhavaddi achakshatma vagamotrayavan navah patanye atmasamam patantrinas tatha saman vishnu gatim vipaschitaha. O rishis, who are powerfully pure as the sun, I shall describe to you the transcendental pastimes of Vishnu as far as my knowledge is concerned. As the birds fly in the sky as far as the capacity allows, so do the learned devotees of the Lord. So do the learned devotees describe the Lord as far as the realizations allow. So Sutta Goswami begins by glorifying the sages of Naimisharan as Arimana, they're as powerful as the sun. So in this context, there are three qualities of the sun that Sutta Goswami is talking about. The fact that sun or the sunlight, it is pure, it is purifying, and it is prophylactic. So even if the sun goes to a dirty place, the sun remains pure. By the influence of the sun, a dirty place, Prabhupada gives the example of dirty water, it dries up and gets purified. And prophylactic is that it gives immunity. So it protects against future contamination. So these are the qualities that are there in Krishna. And he bestows these qualities on his devotees. That the devotees are pure. By their association, everyone and everything becomes pure. And they impart the realizations by which they are immune from future contamination. Basically, they steer others to the path of bhakti, which protects them from future contamination. So Sutta Goswami, by comparing the sages to the sun, is in a more poetic way glorifying them as pure devotees of Krishna who are in direct contact with him, with his qualities. And Sutta is also speaking from a platform of humility. So if you remember earlier on, he had talked about his own fallen position. Here he's also referring to that. So he's saying, like the sun, you have purified me. You have enlightened me and you have energized me. So now I will speak to the extent my capacity allows while depending on your mercy. So this point of speaking according to the capacity while depending on mercy is very important for those who preach on the scriptures, whether it's preaching to a large group of people or preaching to another individual. But this quality is important to imbibe. So Prabhupada in the purport says, the pastime of the Lord in different features can only be estimated partly by the great learned devotees. So Srila Sutta Goswami has rightly taken this position in describing the pastime of the Lord as far he has realized. Factually, only the Lord himself can describe himself. And his learned devotees also can describe him as far as the Lord gives him the power of description. So he uses the analogy of the birds flying in the sky. So the sky is unlimited, but the ability of the bird to fly is limited. So Krishna has unlimited qualities. In fact, even the Prabhupada says that only Krishna can describe himself, but actually even Krishna fails to describe himself. Every time he thinks about himself, he gets surprised by new qualities. So, which is basically a way of saying that he has infinite qualities. The analogy of the sun can also be applied over here, that the metaphor of the sun, sorry. So just like if a bird tries to fly beyond its ability, then the sun will burn it. So similarly, if an aspiring devotee tries to fly beyond its ability, then Sutta Goswami, he's praying to the sages that you're like the sun. If I speak beyond the ability of my realization, then please stop me. So one often wonders when reading such verses is how can one honestly speak according to one's realizations. So many times when we say that you have to chant attentively, and then in your mind you know that you yourself are not able to chant attentively. Or someone comes to you and say, Prabhuji, I'm not able to follow my sadhana. And then you say, okay, in order to follow your sadhana, go to bed early, get up early, follow a regulated life. And then while you're saying it, in your mind, you're thinking that there are so many times you have not been able to do that yourself. Similarly, when speaking about, like we are discussing Bhagavatam, a lot of the realizations are Prabhupada's realizations, which are definitely beyond my capacity to speak. So this was a point that I had actually discussed with Guru Maharaj once, and he made two uh, I guess additional points. The first is that when one speaks beyond one's realization, then there should be a genuine effort for the person to reach that level of realization. So if one is saying that you chant sincerely, then the person should be at least attempting to chant sincerely. Now he may be failing, but at least he should be attempting. It should not be that he is not chanting or he has completely given up on his attempts to chant sincerely, and then he's going around telling everybody else that you chant sincerely. Or the person is speculating, right, which is also a sign of insincerity. So that was the first point, that one must speak, uh, when one is speaking beyond one's realization, then at least there should be an attempt to achieve those realizations. And the second is that one can always borrow the realizations of the acharyas as long as one presents them transparently and without distortion. So when Srila Prabhupada wrote his purports, he wrote them for this purpose only, that others can speak about them, discuss them, present them. Now, very few people have that level of realization. But as long as they're presenting it true to what Prabhupada has spoken, or whoever else, if you're speaking based on the purports of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, so as long as one is true to that, then one can be understood to be not being an upstart. So, so in the 10th canto, 28th chapter, I believe there is a discussion of the rasa dance, and there are classes that are given. And Srila Prabhupada himself says the purports are not Srila Prabhupada's, the purports are his disciples. But he had often said that speaking about rasa dance realizes a very high level of realization. But yet he presented it in the Krishna book, one of the earliest literature that he released. And there, if you read it, you see that he talks about it in accurate details as presented in the Bhagavatam. He does not kind of submerge it, thinking that the Krishna book is meant for for people who haven't read the first 9 cantos. And the reason is that he is presenting it based on his own empowerment. That he's presenting his own realizations, and as long as one stays true to it, there is no offense that is committed there. So later on, we will see Sukadeva Goswami also expressed the same sentiment of humility. And I just found this purport to be very relevant, so I'll quickly read it. So this comes later on in the Bhagavatam, in the 2nd canto, 4th chapter, 11th verse. Sukadeva Goswami says, well, this is the purport. Srila Prabhupada says, the devotees of the Lord, while delivering speeches and describing the transcendental attributes of the Lord, do not think that they can do anything independently. They think that they can speak only what they are induced to speak by the Supreme Lord, the Master of the senses. The senses of the individual being are not his own. The devotees know that such senses belong to the Supreme Lord, and they can be properly used when they are employed by the service of the Lord. The senses are instruments and the elements are ingredients, all endowed by the Lord. Therefore, whatever an individual can speak, see, etc., is under the direction of the Lord only. The Bhagavad Gita 15:15 confirms this. Sarvasya chaham nidhisanavishto mata smritir jnanam apohanam cha. No one is free to act freely and independently, and as such, one should seek the permission of the Lord to act or eat or speak, and by the blessings of the Lord, everything done by a devotee is beyond the principles of the four defects typical in the conditioned soul. Okay, so this is the end of Sutta Goswami's prayers. After that, he will start speaking of what he has been asked to. So from verses 18 to 23, Sutta Goswami has expressed his gratitude and prayers in response to the blessings and the prayers of the sages of Naimisharanya. So quickly summarizing it, 4 points have come forth. One, Sutta Goswami says is that by serving, following, or even just conversing with Vaishnavas, one becomes qualified to speak about Krishna, even if born in a low family. So he glorifies Vaishnav Sangha. Then he talks about the greatness of Krishna. That Krishna is unlimited and he is the absolute truth. Krishna is all powerful. By serving, one can attain immediate liberation. So he started out by talking about his own inadequacy. He talks about the greatness of Krishna, and then what bridges the two is the mercy of the devotees. And then he ends with this caution that one should only describe Krishna to the extent of his realization. Okay, so now he will start talking about the pastime leading to the cursing of Maharaj Parikshit. So I'll just take a pause over here and see if there's any questions or comments. Okay, if not, then we can continue. So this is reading verse 24-25. Ekada dhanurudyamaya vicharan mragyam vane mrigan anugataha shranta kshudidastrishto brisham jalashayam achakshana praviveshatam ashramam Dadarsha muni mashinam shantam milita lochanam. Once upon a time, Maharaj Parikshit, while engaged in hunting in the forest with bows and arrows, became extremely fatigued, hungry and thirsty while following the stags. While searching for a reservoir of water, he entered the hermitage of the well-known Shamik Rishi and saw the sage sitting silently with closed eyes. So this verse is a succinct summary of the events leading to the cursing of Maharaj Parikshit, or establishing the circumstances that leads to it. So Sutta Goswami, in 14 verses, from this verse 24 to 37, will talk about this incident of the cursing of Maharaj Parikshit. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada right away, he establishes the context of this pastime. And he does that so that while we go through the pastime, there's no confusion in our own mind. So Prabhupada says that this will perform for only two reasons. One, for Krishna to get Maharaj Parishad back to the spiritual home, and second, for the Srimad Bhagavatam to be spoken. So he cautions that one should not think that there is any fault on the part of Maharaj Parikshit. So as a pure devotee of the Lord, as a Mahabhagavat, he would never have been perturbed by the bodily demands, and he could never have reacted in anger, envy, or pride, especially towards a Brahman. So uh, so it's just a point of trivia that when Srila Prabhupada, in his earlier commentary of the Bhagavatam, first canto, first chapter, fourth verse, he had first translated it to once upon a time in a holy place in the forest of Naimisharanya. And then later on it changed once upon a time to once in a holy place. And the explanation that I understand was given is that Prabhupada was concerned that when people see this phrase once upon a time, they will think that it is a fairy tale. Because fairy tales often begin with this phrase, that once upon a time in a distant land there lived a king and a queen, or once upon a time there was an evil wizard. So he wanted to disambiguate this, even if it is subconscious, but he wanted to disambiguate this notion that the Bhagavatam was a mythological book, or was a collection of stories. Here, however, he uses it because it comes later on and is part of the flow. So he uses this term once upon a time. Next verse, 26. Pratirudendriya prana manobuddhim uparatam stanatrayat param praptam brahmabhutam avikriyam. The Muni's senses, sense organs, breath, mind, and intelligence were all restrained from material activities. And he was situated in a trance apart from the three: wakefulness, dream, and unconsciousness, having achieved a transcendental position qualitatively equal with the Supreme Absolute. So interestingly, Sutta Goswami, he is first talking about the internal position of Shamik Rishi. Later on, he will talk about the external situation. So what is the internal situation? That he is at the stage of Brahmabhuta, of having the qualitative equality with the Brahman. He presently, so Brahmabhuta is a state of his consciousness. His present condition is that of one who is in Samadhi. So generally speaking, we are in one of the three states. So either we are wakeful, or we are sleeping, or we are in deep sleep, which Prabhupada calls unconsciousness. So we generally move between these three. But a yogi, he goes into a stage that is apart from these three, which is Samadhi, complete absorption in the focus. And in case of Shamik Rishi, being on the Brahmabhuta platform, he was focusing on the Supreme Absolute. So which is characterized by complete cessation of all activities, both at a gross level and at a subtle level. So this is the internal position of the Rishi. Now the king will see him, Maharaj Parishad will see him externally in a slightly different way. So we'll look at the next verse. Viprakirna jata channam roravena jinena cha vishayuttalurutkam vishushyatalurudkam tatha bhutam maya chata. The sage in meditation was covered by the skin of a stag, and long compressed hair was scattered all over him. The king, whose palate was dry from thirst, asked him for water. So this is how the king saw Shamik Rishi. He was sitting and he was covered by deer skin. So the sages would cover themselves with the skin of ruru. So ruru is a kind of a deer, it's an antelope, and the skin of the deer has this quality that it keeps away snakes and insects and scorpions and flies, so that while the sages are sitting on it, they are not disturbed by these elements. So he has his hair tied into locks and spread all over. So the sages would tie the hair into locks because to prevent the contamination of the hair. So if the hair were open, then because the sages would still sit in a place for a very long time, then uh, the hair would get dirty. It would attract insects and moisture. So in order to prevent that, the sages would compress the hair into locks. So the closest to this, what we can see now is what are called as a dreadlocks. So dreadlocks is what is people in the, I think people in the Caribbean kind of have that hairstyle, where they'll take the hair and make several tight locks uh, out of it. But of course, here the reason is it's a practical reason. Now, this is how the king saw the sage, and Prabhupada says that the king, being thirsty, asked the sage for water. That such a great devotee and king asked for water from a sage absorbed in trance was certainly providential. Otherwise, there was no chance of such a unique happening. Maharaj Parikshit was thus placed in an awkward position so that gradually Srimad Bhagavatam could be revealed. And Prabhupada in most of the purpose will make this point again and again for emphasis, that one should not commit offenses by thinking that Maharaj Parikshit was on a material platform, that he was thirsty and he was envious and he was acting according to it. But essentially, he was serving the purpose that Krishna had meant for him to serve, which is facilitate the speaking of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Next verse, 28. Alabtatranna bhumyade rasampraptargya sunar asampraptargya sunartaha avagyatvam ivatmanam manyamanas. The king, not received by any formal welcome, by means of being offered a seat, place, water, and sweet address, considered himself neglected, and so thinking, he became angry. So Srila Prabhupada in the purport says that these are the 4 things that one must always offer to a guest. One must offer the person a seat to sit in. One must offer the person some water to drink. One must speak with the person sweetly, and one must so seat and place, the place adds context to the seat, that one must invite the person inside the house. So Prabhupada is very critical of, he writes in the purport that sometimes guests come to your house and then people are just standing on the door and talking to them. So that is insulting. When a guest comes, you should immediately invite the person inside, offer him a place, your place, then offer him a seat, then offer him some water to drink, and then offer him sweet words. Prabhupada says that even if an enemy comes to your house, you should deal with the person in this verse. So he quotes this so I have this small snippet from a lecture that Prabhupada gave on this. Prabhupada says that friend is welcome, that's all right. But even an enemy comes, they are not forbidden. Not that in the gate there is, oh, beware of dog, no trespasser allowed. No. There was no restriction. Even enemy was admitted. Come on. So graham shatrum api praptam vivastam akuta bhayam. Even an enemy enters your house. You will receive him in such a friendly way that he will forget that you are his enemy. That was the system. So if you remember that in the Mahabharata once, Arjun went to meet Duryodhan. And even though this was in the heat of the battle, and Duryodhan was already facing severe losses, but as soon as Arjun came, he immediately invited him in. He respectfully said, "You're my guest. Ask me for anything and you will get it. If you want Hastinapur, it is yours." And of course, Arjun refused because against the Kshatriya dharma to beg. But he did ask for the 5 arrows that Bhishma had prepared and he took them away. But even a person like Duryodhan, who was by nature irreligious, was following this dharma. So Prabhupada, in the lecture later on, he talks about that. That is why one is called an atithi. So atithi means that one who comes without any time. Tithi is time or appointment. So Prabhupada says, not that you first fix up a time, I will come at this time, and only if I come at this time you receive me, otherwise you don't receive me. So no, atithi means anytime they can come, knock at your door, and then it's the duty of the grahastha to welcome him by at least these 4 things, if not more. Next verse, 29. Ahutapurva sahasa shrutatradvyam arditatmanaha brahmanam pratyabhut brahman matsaro manyorevacha. O Brahmanas, the circumstances having distressed him with extreme hunger and thirst, the king directed towards the sage his anger and envy, which he had never before directed towards a Brahman. So Prabhupada says the king knew well that Brahmanas, sages, children, women, and old men are always beyond the jurisdiction of punishment. Similarly, the king, even though he commits a great mistake, is never to be considered a wrongdoer. So Sutta Goswami said that Parikshit Maharaj has never acted in this way. And even in his dreams, he has never acted in this way. So this is something that he has no prior experience of. He has never experienced anger and envy, especially directed towards a Brahman. So this uncharacteristic reaction of the king indicates that this reaction was planted in him by the will of Krishna. Verse 30. Satu Brahma Risheram She Gatasu Murgam Rusha Vinir Gachan Danushkotya Nidhaya Puramagataha. While leaving, the king, being so insulted, picked up a lifeless snake with his bow and angrily placed it on the shoulder of the sage. Then he returned to his palace. So Dhanu Kotya means the tip of the arrow. So the tip of the arrow is a little bit of an arc or a curve. So the sage used the tip of the arrow, and the reason he used it was because a snake, of course, is an inauspicious animal, but the dead body of a snake is even more inauspicious. So he did not want to touch it himself and contaminate himself. So that's why he used the tip of his arrow, and with that he picked it up and he put it around the shoulder of the sage. So Vishnu Chakravarti says that the king thought, "O Brahman, I'm respecting you just as you have greeted, me. So under normal circumstances, the king would have been greeted by the sage with a garland of fragrant flowers. But instead, the king felt that he was being disrespected, that he was being greeted with envy. So he reciprocated by greeting the sage with the symbol of envy, which is a snake, and a symbol of inauspiciousness, which is a death snake. So snakes are amongst the animals they considered to be highly envious, because they're amongst the few animals that will attack you even if you don't attack them. That's the nature of one who is envious. So the king then returned to his palace, and the mood that he returned to was that he was still angry. So even though he had insulted the sage, but that insult did not do anything to uh, appease him. So which indicates the source. So activities that are done out of envy, they do not get uh, um, there's nothing that you can do to propitiate them. So if you're doing something out of a sense of righteousness, if you're doing something even out of a sense of revenge, then once your revenge has been accompanied, then you become free of the contamination. But the nature of envy is that it simply grows. That even if you um, condemn the other person out of envy, even if you punish the other person out of envy, it will still not assuage your envy. So the purpose is here not to show that the king became envious. The purpose is to show that such envy could not have come in the king. It was not the nature of the king to have this kind of envy. Next verse, 31. Esha kim nibrata shesha karno milite kshanah vrisha samadhi rao svita kim nu shat kshatrabandhubihi. Upon returning, he began to contemplate and argue with himself whether the sage had actually been in meditation with senses concentrated and eyes closed, or whether he had just been feigning trance just to avoid receiving a lower kshatriya. So what do we see over here now? Now we see that Parishad Maharaj's natural position of a devotee is being re-established slowly, shana shana. So initially he went convinced that the sage had purposefully insulted him. Now he's having this conversation with himself. He's having this debate. So the first influence of doubt is now coming. That did the sage actually disrespect me, or was the sage in a situation of actual samadhi? So in his mind, at least there is that acknowledgement that perhaps the sage was in the stage of samadhi. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, the plan was made by the will of the Lord. And by the will of the Lord, the situation of frustration was created. The plan was that for this so-called misdeed, the king could be cursed by an inexperienced Brahmana boy infected by the influence of Kali. And thus the king could leave his hearth and home for good. His connection with Srila Sukadeva Goswami would enable the presentation of the great Srimad Bhagavatam, which is considered to be the book incarnation of the Lord. This book incarnation of the Lord gives much fascinating information of the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, like his Ras Leela with the spiritual cowherd damsels of Rajbhog. This specific pastime of the Lord has a special significance because anyone who properly learns about this particular pastime of the Lord will certainly be dissuaded about mundane sex desire and be placed on the path of sublime devotional service to the Lord. So it's interesting that Srila Prabhupada in the purport talks about the highest realization that one can get from the Bhagavatam, which is the discussion of the Rasa Leela. Generally, Prabhupada does not talk about it that much, but he's talking about here to indicate that this is the cost of that sacrifice. That in order to manifest such exalted pastimes for mundane people like us, Parikshit Maharaj made this ultimate sacrifice. Now, the sacrifice for Parikshit Maharaj was really not giving up his body. That was a good thing for him because he went back to Godhead. The sacrifice for him was insulting the Brahman. That was something that was an act that he would not even do in his dreams. But he did it. He did that sacrifice as a service to Krishna. So some of the other points Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says that one can understand that the anger in Parikshit Maharaj did not arise from karma. Why? Because it resulted in his fortunate meeting with Sukadev Goswami. Nor could it be because of a result of his thirst. This is because Maharaj Parikshit was a great yogi and was able to control his senses. When he returned home, he was pained by repentance and did not drink water and did not eat food for 7 days. While fasting from food and water for 7 days, he was cheerful, active, and inquisitive. Thus, it is clear that being thirsty would not have bewildered his senses. Okay, next verse, 1832. Tasya putrati tejasvi viharan balkurba kahi rajnagam prapitam tatam shrutva tatridam abravit. The sage had a son who was very powerful, being a Brahman's son. While he was playing with inexperienced boys, he heard of his father's distress, which was occasioned by the king. Then and there, the boy spoke as follows. So this is the introduction to Shringi. So Sutta Goswami makes, he does not make it directly, but he makes it indirectly, that Shringi was powerful, being a Brahman's son. So he is saying that he did not have any inherent tejas. But because he was a Dvija Brahman, because he was the son of a Brahman, he had this teja. And then the second point that he makes is that people tend to associate with like-minded people. So who was Shringi hanging out with? He was playing with inexperienced boys. So boys who were like himself. So they were also Brahmanas, but they were also without any inherent good qualifications. And the reason this point is made is that when Shringi was boasting about his Brahma Tejas, when he expressed his resolve to curse, none of the Brahman boys stopped him. Now his father was there, and we can know from the subsequent conversation, the father would have immediately stopped him. Or if there was any other qualified Brahman, the qualified Brahman would immediately have preached to him. But the friends that he was playing with, they just kept quiet. So in the purport, Prabhupada says, this boy was known as Shringi, and he achieved good training in brahmacharya by his father, so that he could be as powerful as a Brahman even at that age. So elsewhere it is said that he was 10 years of age. But because the age of Kali was seeking an opportunity to spoil the cultural heritage of the 4 orders of life, the inexperienced boy gave a chance for the age of Kali to enter into the field of Vedic culture. Hatred of the lower orders of life began from the Brahman boy under the influence of Kali. And thus, cultural life began to dwindle day by day. The first victim of Brahmanical injustice was Maharaj Parikshit. And thus, the protection given by the king against the onslaught of Kali was slackened. So, Shingi had some knowledge, primarily because of his father, but he was not of good character. And just like a sword becomes increasingly dangerous in the hand of a monkey, this knowledge became dangerous in the hand of one who is inexperienced. So when the Brahmanas get knowledge, before that they are also trained in the proper use of the knowledge. So the Kshatriyas, they cultivate qualities to enforce and protect the principles of dharma. And the Brahmanas cultivate the qualities by which they can advise the Kshatriyas on these principles. So in the Varnashram Dharma, it is prescribed that the Brahmins must be renounced and the Kshatriyas have wealth and power. So the Kshatriyas, where the Brahmins, they act without restraint or direction, because the Brahmanas are the one who give them the principles of the scriptures that serve both as restraint or direction. Now the Brahmanas without Kshatriya are unable to do anything, because the Brahmanas are by nature thoughtful, but they lack initiative. So while the Brahmanas lack initiative, the Kshatriyas lack restraint. But when the two work together, then the restraint of the restraint of the Brahmanas acts on the initiative of the Kshatriyas. So that's how the Varnashram system works. But when the Brahmanas lose their restraint, then the system begins to devolve. 33 verse. Aho dharma palanam pivanam bali bhujameva swamanyagam yaddashanam dwarapanam shunameva. The Brahman son Shringi said, "Oh, just look at the sins of the rulers, who like crows and watchdogs at the door perpetrate sins against their masters, contrary to the principles governing servants." So this verse, it reveals the arrogance of Shringi, that he is considering himself to be a master and is considering the Kshatriyas to be the servant. So he is not only considering to be servant, he is calling Maharaj Parikshit or the Kshatriya as crows and watchdogs. So the crows by nature are thieves. So in this country, probably there are not crows, but in India we have many crows. And the nature of the crows is that if you put anything that is not guarded, they will take it and run away. Sometimes they will come in the house and steal it. So that's the nature of crows. What about the dogs? So the dogs are supposed to live on whatever remnant scraps have been given to them and display complete loyalty. And Shringi will speak about this in the next verse. So Shringi is upset that this is the deviation that has happened. That the Kshatriyas are not supposed to enter into the house of the Brahmins, but like a crow, they are coming into the house, as a thief, demanding food and water. Like a dog, the Kshatriyas, they're supposed to be loyal to the Brahmins under all circumstances. So the nature of the dog is that even if the master beats the dog is still loyal to the master. So he's saying that even if the Brahmanas rebuke them, insult them, beat them, the Kshatriyas are dogs and they should remain loyal. So Prabhupada says, thus the downfall of the Brahmanical powers began as they gave importance to birthright without culture. The downfall of the Brahman caste began in the age of Kali. And since the Brahmana is the head of the social order, all other orders of the society also began to deteriorate. The beginning of the Brahmanical deterioration was highly deplored by the father of Shringi, as we will find. Next verse, 34. Brahmana Shatra Bandhurhi Grahapalo Niropitaha Sakatam Tad Gredvasta Sabandam Bhoktam Marati. The descendants of the kingly order are definitely designated as watchdogs, and they must keep themselves at the door. On what grounds can dog enter the house and claim to dine with the master on the same plate? So here Shringi is specifically addressing the fact that Maharaj Parikshit entered into the house of Shamik Rishi and expected to be given food and water. And then he uses the analogy of the dog, that the Kshatriyas are like guard dogs, and the duty is to guard the kingdom, and the Brahmanas are the real owners of the kingdom. And he's not incorrect. That's how the Varnashram Dharma works. That the Kshatriyas actually govern on behalf of the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas actually are the real proprietor, because they are, even though the Brahmanas don't personally own anything, but everything is under their direction. So in that way, they are the proprietor. So Shringi is taking it in an egoistical manner. So he's saying that I and my father, we are masters, and our house is the house of a master, and Maharaj Parikshit as a guard dog should have remained outside and not come inside. So he addresses Maharaj Parikshit as Kshatra Bandhur. So Kshatra Bandhur is basically an unqualified child, a son or an unqualified relative of a Kshatriya, to indicate that he does not belong to the Varnashram. Factually speaking, we'll see it is actually Shringi who is a Brahma Bandhur. So Prabhupada says the mentality of false prestige is the cause of downfall of the perfect social order. And we can see that in the beginning it was started by the inexperienced son of a Brahman. Next verse, 35. Krishna kate bhagvati shastarya utpatagamina tad vinasetu nadyaham shashmi pashyatami balam. After the departure of Lord Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead and supreme ruler of everyone, these upstarts have flourished, our protector being gone. Therefore, I shall take this matter and punish them. Just witness my power. So what is Shringi doing over here? He's taking the position of Krishna. So he's saying that Krishna is gone. Not because he is a big devotee of Krishna. And as a Brahman, he understands that Krishna is the personality of Godhead. But this is the downfall of the Brahman, that they forget their actual position. There is a saying that is often said, especially in Karma Kand in India, that Brahmana Deva Bhava. That Brahman should be treated like a god. It's a Vedic saying. It's accurate, but the injunction is for the other varnas. The injunction is not for the Brahmans. So the injunction is that the Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra should treat a qualified Brahman as Deva Bhava. But the injunction is not for the Brahman, saying that no, you're God, or everybody should treat you like God. Shringi is making that mistake. He's saying that Krishna is gone. But no worries. Now that Krishna is gone, I shall take up this matter and punish them. Just witness my power. So Prabhupada says the inexperienced Brahman, puffed up by a little Brahma Tejas, became influenced by the spell of Kali Yuga. Maharaj Parishad gave license to Kali to live in 4 places as mentioned here and before. But by his very expert government, the personality of Kali could hardly find the places allotted him. The personality of Kali Yuga, therefore, was seeking the opportunity to establish authority. And by the grace of Krishna, he found a hole in the puffed up, inexperienced son of a Brahman. So one of the point that is made over here is that as Srila Prabhupada is saying that Kali was not allowed to enter into the kingdom because of the influence of Maharaj Parikshit. So that is one point. The second point is that even if the Kali had entered, it would enter into a place where where the 4 regulative principles were being broken or gold was being hoarded. Now clearly, Shringi was not in any of this situation. He was not breaking any of the regulative principles. There was no gold being hoarded there. Yet we see that Prabhupada and Sutta Goswami are mentioning that Shringi has been influenced by Kali. So how do we understand this? That Maharaj Parishad banished Kali. He gave him 5 places to stay. Shringi, influenced by Kali, curses Maharaj Parikshit, but none of those 5 places are manifest where Shringi is present. So the understanding that is given over here is that this is proof that this was enacted by Krishna. That the only person, maybe not the only person, but the one person who could circumvent the control of Maharaj Parikshit was Krishna. Maharaj Parikshit had banished Kali, but Krishna allowed Kali to come. Maharaj Parikshit, by his own potency, did not allow Kali within the boundaries of his kingdom. But Krishna, by his potency, he not only allowed Kali to enter, but enter at the apex of the society, enter into the mind of a Brahman. So all these points, by these points, one can understand that this was completely being enacted by the mercy of Krishna. Okay, verse 36. Ityuktva rasotam raksho vayasyan rishibalakaha kaushikyapa upasaprasya vagvajram visharjaha. The son of the rishi, his eyes red hot with anger, touched the water of the river Kaushik while speaking to his playmates and discharged the following thunderbolt of words. So in Bhagavad Gita chapter 10 verses 4 to 5, some of the defining qualities of a Brahman are given. And some of them are prominent. One of them are Kshama, which is forgiveness, Satyam, which is truthfulness or being true to the scriptures, Dhamma, which is control of senses, Sama, which is control of the mind, and Ahimsa, which is non-violence. So by the force of all these qualities, one can understand that a Brahman would never act the way that Shringi acted. The most important quality, Kshama. We see that in Shamik Rishi, that he did not consider the offense of Maharaj Parishad to be significant. So he did not even forgive him because he did not take offense. So forgiveness happens when one takes offense. And Shamik Rishi didn't even reach that stage. So it said that he threw the snake off, did not consider the offense to be of any significance. So Kshama was not there. Satyam means being true to your position. In this case, true to your position of being a Brahman. Then Dama Sama Ahimsa. Control of mind and senses. So if Shringi had control of the mind, he would not become angry. And Ahimsa is not